They thought Earth's orbit was unguarded until our secret Stardestroyer Decloaked. Admiral Cyrax stood on the command bridge of his flagship and watched the blue planet grow larger on the viewing screen. Earth, such a small world, such a weak species living on it. He had conquered 12 worlds in his career, and this one would be the easiest of them all. His scaled hands rested on the railing as he studied the tactical display. 40 warships under his command, each one capable of burning cities to ash from orbit. And what did the humans have to defend themselves? Nothing. His scouts had checked 3 times. No military stations, no weapons platforms, no fleet hiding behind their moon, just cargo ships and passenger vessels and scientific stations studying rocks in space. The Varakthan Dominion had watched humanity for 200 years. Ever since these soft creatures had stumbled into the galactic community, they had been a curiosity. They made beautiful music. They created art that other species found strangely moving. They wrote poetry and philosophy that spread across 1,000 worlds. But they had no teeth, no claws, no ships of war. Cyrax found them pathetic. "Admiral," his tactical officer called out, "we have completed our final scan of the Sol system. I am ready to deliver my report." "Speak," Cyrax commanded. "The humans have approximately 200 vessels in their home system. All of them are civilian. Cargo haulers, passenger transports, mining ships working the asteroid belt, and research stations. We detected no weapon systems, no military communications, and no hidden installations. Earth is completely undefended." Cyrax allowed himself a smile, which on his reptilian face looked more like a threat. "As we expected, send word to the High Command. Tell them the Sol system is ready for harvest. We will accept their surrender within the day." The message went out across the vast distances of space, traveling through relay stations that the Dominion had placed throughout the galaxy. In the throne room of the Varakthan homeworld, the High Command received the news with satisfaction. Another species would soon kneel before them. Another world would feed their empire. On Earth, the morning sun rose over Antarctica. The frozen continent sparkled white and pure under a clear sky. Deep in this wilderness of ice stood a building that looked like any other research station. Small, simple, built to survive the harsh winters. A sign near the entrance read, "Deep Space Monitoring Station 7. Commander Elena Vasquez sat at her console, drinking coffee and reviewing the night's reports. She was 43 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and calm brown eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. She had served at this station for 15 years, watching the stars and waiting for a signal she hoped would never come. Her console beeped. A single line of text appeared on her screen. Condition whisper. Aurora protocol active. Elena set down her coffee. Her hand was steady. She had trained for this moment her entire adult life. She had run simulations 1,000 times. But some part of her had always believed it would never actually happen. She was wrong. She pressed her thumb against a scanner hidden under her desk. The wall behind her slid open, revealing an elevator that did not appear on any official blueprints. Elena stepped inside and descended into the frozen earth. The elevator dropped for nearly a full minute. When the doors opened, Elena walked into a room that would have shocked anyone who thought they knew what humanity was capable of. 20 officers sat at advanced consoles, their screens filled with data that most humans had never seen. Maps of the solar system showed green dots scattered across the darkness of space. Each dot was a secret. Each dot was a weapon. "Status report," Elena said as she took her place at the central command station. Captain David Chen, her second in command, turned to face her. He was young for his position, only 35, but he had earned his place through skill and dedication. "The Varakthan scouting fleet entered the outer system 6 hours ago. They have been running scans continuously. They found exactly what we wanted them to find." "Nothing," Elena said. "Nothing," David confirmed. "They believe we are defenseless. Admiral Cyrax has already sent word to his high command. We intercepted the transmission. They are calling in the full invasion fleet." Elena nodded slowly. This was the moment that generations of humans had prepared for. 200 years of building in secret. 200 years of hiding their true strength behind a mask of weakness. 200 years of patience. "How long until the invasion fleet arrives?" she asked. 48 hours, 200 warships. It will be the largest Vrakthan force ever assembled for a single conquest. Around the room, officers exchanged glances. 200 warships. The Vrakthan had conquered entire civilizations with smaller fleets. They had burned worlds and enslaved billions. And now they were coming for Earth. Elena studied the main display. The green dots were scattered throughout the solar system. Mining stations that were not really mining stations. Research satellites that were not really research satellites. Cargo ships that carried something far more dangerous than cargo. All of it hidden in plain sight. All of it waiting. Send the signal to all Aurora assets, Elena commanded. Begin wake-up procedures. We have 48 hours to prepare. David hesitated for just a moment. Commander, once we send that signal, there is no going back. We will be revealing capabilities that we have hidden for 2 centuries. The entire galaxy will know what we really are. The entire galaxy thinks we are poets and philosophers, Elena replied. Harmless dreamers with no understanding of war. In 48 hours, a fleet will arrive that intends to enslave our species. We do not have the luxury of secrets anymore. She looked around the room at her officers. These men and women had given their lives to a mission that most humans did not even know existed. They had trained in hidden facilities, served on secret ships, prepared for a war they hoped would never come. Now the war was here. Send the signal, Elena ordered. Wake them all. David turned back to his console and began typing. Across the solar system, encrypted messages flew through the darkness of space. On 100 different stations and ships, men and women received the same order. They opened sealed containers that had waited decades to be opened. They powered up systems that had never been tested outside of simulations. They prepared to reveal humanity's greatest secret. In the asteroid belt, a mining station called Rock Hopper 7 received the signal. Its crew of 20 had spent years pretending to dig iron and nickel from floating rocks. Now they opened a hidden compartment in their station's core and began assembling weapons that the galaxy had never seen. Near Jupiter, a research satellite called Galileo's Eye received the signal. Its crew had spent years studying the gas giant storms and sending home scientific papers. Now they unfolded panels that were not solar collectors and aimed them toward the distant sun. On Mars, in a canyon that tourists were not allowed to visit, a door that had been sealed for a century slowly began to open. Elena watched the green dots on her display begin to pulse, one after another. Each pulse meant another asset coming online. Each pulse meant another piece of humanity's hidden strength awakening from its long sleep. Commander, David said quietly, there is one more signal to send. Elena knew what he meant. She had known this moment would come. She walked to a console at the far end of the room where a single red button sat under a protective glass cover. The Prometheus, she said softly. Yes, Commander, the Prometheus. Elena had never seen the Prometheus. Almost no human had. It existed only in the highest classified files, its construction overseen by officers who had died decades ago. Its very existence known to fewer than 100 people on Earth. But Elena had studied its specifications. She knew what it could do. She lifted the glass cover. The button beneath was simple and red. Such a small thing to carry such weight. Elena pressed it. Somewhere in the darkness beyond Neptune, in a fold of space that normal sensors could not detect, something stirred, something vast, something that had waited in silence for 200 years, crewed by generations of sailors who had lived and died aboard its decks without ever firing its weapons. The word awaken traveled across the solar system at the speed of light. When it reached its destination, lights began to flicker on in corridors that had known only darkness. Engines that had idled for decades began to build power. And a ship 3 kilometers long began to prepare for war. Admiral Chen Wei-Lin was eating his breakfast when the signal came. He was 72 years old and he had spent his entire career preparing to command a ship he had never actually visited. Now, for the first time in his life, he would set foot on the Prometheus. He put down his fork and stood. His hands trembled slightly, but not from fear, from anticipation. Back in Antarctica, Elena watched the final green dot appear on her display. The Prometheus was awake. All Aurora assets are online, David reported. We are ready, Commander. Elena looked at the map of her solar system. Somewhere out there, the Varakthan were coming with 200 warships, believing they faced helpless prey. They thought they were wolves descending on sheep. They were wrong. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Now, she said, we wait. Above Earth, the stars shone cold and distant, among them invisible to Varakthan sensors hidden from the sight of a galaxy that had underestimated humanity for 2 centuries. The wolves of Earth were gathering, and they were hungry. They thought Earth's orbit was unguarded until our secret Star Destroyer decloaked. The history files were old. Elena had read them 100 times, but she read them again now as her officers prepared for war. She needed to remember why they had done this, why humanity had chosen to hide its strength behind a mask of weakness for 200 years. It had begun in the year 2147 when the first alien ship entered the Sol system. Humanity had celebrated. They were not alone in the universe, but the celebration did not last long. The ship belonged to the Galactic Concord, a loose alliance of over 300 species. The aliens were friendly enough. They welcomed humanity into their community. They shared technology and knowledge. They opened trade routes and invited human ambassadors to their great councils. But the human ambassadors were smart. They watched. They listened. They learned. What they learned was terrifying. The galaxy was not a peaceful place. It was a jungle where the strong devoured the weak. The Galactic Concord was not truly an alliance. It was more like a collection of survivors, species who had learned to huddle together for protection against the greater predators. And the greatest predator of all was the Varakthan Dominion. Elena pulled up images from those early days. Varakthan warships burning through the defenses of peaceful worlds. Varakthan soldiers marching through the streets of conquered cities. Varakthan masters standing over kneeling slaves from a dozen different species. The Dominion had been expanding for 1,000 years, absorbing anyone too weak to fight back. The human ambassadors had returned home with a warning. The galaxy was dangerous. Humanity needed to prepare. But how? That was the question that had consumed Earth's greatest minds. Some wanted to build a massive fleet and show the galaxy that humanity could defend itself. Others wanted to join the Galactic Concord's defensive alliances and hope that numbers would provide safety. A woman named Sarah Chen had proposed a different path. Elena studied Sarah Chen's face in the historical records. She had been young then, only 35, but her eyes held wisdom beyond her years. She had been a historian before she became a strategist, and she understood something that others had missed. In the galaxy, power was a trap. Species that showed their strength became targets. Other powers would test them, probe them, seek to destroy them before they became threats. The Varakthan in particular hunted down any species that showed signs of military potential. They had learned that it was easier to crush an enemy while they were still young than to face them when they had grown strong. But species that showed no strength were also doomed. They were conquered and enslaved, their people and resources absorbed into greater empires. There seemed to be no safe path. Show your power and be destroyed. Hide your power and be conquered. Sarah Chen had found a third way. Humanity would appear weak. They would become known for their art, their music, their philosophy. They would trade in culture rather than weapons. They would smile and bow and let the galaxy believe they were harmless dreamers. But behind that mask, in secret, they would build. Elena switched to another file. Construction records, classified at the highest level. The first hidden shipyard had been built inside an asteroid in the year 2150. It had taken 20 years to hollow out the rock and install the equipment. The workers had lived their entire lives inside that asteroid, knowing they would never see Earth again, knowing their work would never be recognized. They had died in secret. Their names were not recorded in any public history, but they had built the first warship of the Aurora fleet. More shipyards followed, in the asteroid belt, in the moons of Jupiter, in the frozen darkness beyond Neptune, each one hidden from alien sensors, each one staffed by humans who gave up normal lives to serve a cause that most of their species did not know existed. The technology had come slowly. Human scientists worked in secret laboratories, developing weapons that the galaxy had never seen. Gravity manipulators that could crush a ship like paper. Quantum disruptors that could pass through any shield. cloaking systems that bent space itself to hide their ships from detection. They shared none of it. When alien visitors came to Earth, they found a pleasant world of artists and poets. When human traders visited alien stations, they carried nothing more dangerous than musical instruments and paintings. The mask never slipped. Elena closed the history files and looked around her command center. The men and women working at these consoles were the inheritors of that legacy. They had trained their entire lives for a moment they hoped would never come. They had kept secrets from their families, their friends, their entire species. Now the moment was here. "Commander," David said from his console, "the Vrakthon invasion fleet has departed from their staging area. 200 warships. They will arrive in 36 hours. Elena nodded. 36 hours. Less than 2 days to prepare for the largest battle in human history. "Show me our assets," she ordered. The main display shifted. Green dots appeared across the solar system, each one representing a ship or station that had revealed its true nature. Elena counted them silently. 417 vessels. Most of them were small and fast, designed for quick strikes rather than sustained combat. They carried weapons powerful enough to hurt Vrakthon ships, but they could not stand up to a direct fight with larger warships. But humanity had one advantage the Vrakthon did not expect. They knew the Sol system better than anyone. Every asteroid, every moon, every gravity well and magnetic field. They had spent 2 centuries learning how to use their home territory as a weapon. "What about the Prometheus?" Elena asked. David pulled up a separate display. It showed a region of space beyond Neptune, where normal sensors showed nothing but empty darkness. But hidden in that darkness, in a fold of space that human scientists had created specifically for this purpose, the Prometheus waited. "Admiral Chen has taken command," David reported. "The ship is fully operational. He reports that all weapon systems are ready and all crew are at their stations." Elena studied the specifications of the Prometheus for the 100th time. 3 kilometers long, 1 kilometer wide, armed with weapons that even the Vrakthon had never imagined. It had been under construction for 150 years, its parts built in secret shipyards across the solar system and assembled in the hidden fold of space. No one outside of Earth knew it existed. The Vrakthon believed they were facing a defenseless world. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "The civilian population," Elena said, "what is their status?" "Evacuation is proceeding on schedule. Underground shelters are at 60% capacity. Surface evacuation will be complete within 20 hours. Elena felt a weight in her chest. Billions of humans were being moved underground, hiding from the coming storm. Most of them did not understand what was happening. They had heard the news broadcasts announcing the Vrakthon fleet. They had seen the government's plea for calm. They believed they were about to be conquered. They did not know about the Aurora fleet. They did not know about the Prometheus. They did not know that their species had been preparing for this moment since before their grandparents were born. That secrecy was a burden Elena would carry for the rest of her life. So many people were afraid right now, believing they were helpless. She could not tell them the truth. Not yet. "Commander," David said quietly, "there is one more thing." Elena turned to face him. His expression was troubled. "The Galactic Concord has responded to our distress call. They have expressed sympathy for our situation. They have offered to mediate with the Vrakthon on our behalf." He paused. "They have made it clear that they will not send military assistance." Elena was not surprised. The Galactic Concord was not a true alliance. It was a collection of species who had learned to survive by not provoking the great powers. They would not risk war with the Vrakthon to save Earth. Humanity was on its own. "It does not matter," Elena said. "We never expected their help. We have always known that when this day came, we would face it alone." She turned back to the main display. The green dots of the Aurora fleet pulsed steadily, each one a piece of the greatest secret in human history. In 36 hours, that secret would be revealed. The Vrakthon were coming with 200 warships. They believed they were wolves descending on sheep. They did not know that the sheep had teeth. Elena thought of Sarah Chen, the woman who had set humanity on this path 2 centuries ago. She had died long before the Aurora fleet was complete, but her vision had guided every step of its construction. She had understood something fundamental about power in the galaxy. The strongest position was not to be feared. It was to be underestimated. For 200 years, humanity had been underestimated. They had smiled and bowed and let the galaxy believe they were harmless. They had built their strength in the shadows, patient and silent, waiting for the moment when they would need it. That moment had arrived. Elena looked at her officers, at the men and women who had given their lives to this cause. "Begin final preparations," she ordered. "In 36 hours, we show the galaxy who we really are." The command center hummed with activity. Across the solar system, the Aurora fleet continued to awaken. And in the hidden darkness beyond Neptune, the Prometheus stirred, its ancient engines building power for the battle to come. Humanity was ready. They thought Earth's orbit was unguarded until our secret Star Destroyer decloaked. Admiral Cyrax stood at the center of his command bridge and watched the blue planet grow larger with each passing hour. Earth was beautiful, he had to admit. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. It would make a fine addition to the Dominion's collection. 200 warships followed his flagship in perfect formation. Each one was a masterpiece of Vrakthan engineering, built for conquest and destruction. Their hulls were black as night, their weapons charged and ready. They had burned through the defenses of a dozen worlds, and Earth would be no different. Easier, actually. Earth had no defenses at all. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission from the human government." Cyrax waved his clawed hand. "Put it through." A human face appeared on the screen, an old male with gray hair and tired eyes. His voice trembled as he spoke. "This is Secretary General Marcus Webb of the United Earth Government. We acknowledge your superior force. We are prepared to discuss terms of surrender. We ask only that you spare our civilian population. We will cooperate fully with any demands." Cyrax laughed. It was a harsh sound, like rocks grinding together. "There will be no discussion, human. You will surrender unconditionally. Your people will serve the Dominion. Your resources will feed our empire. Your world will become another jewel in our crown." The human's face went pale. "Please, Admiral, we have no weapons. We cannot fight you. We only ask for mercy." "Mercy is for the strong," Cyrax replied. "You are weak. You have nothing to offer but submission." He cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. "Status of the human vessels?" "Scattered throughout the system, Admiral. Civilian ships attempting to flee. None of them are armed. They pose no threat." Cyrax nodded in satisfaction. This was too easy. The Vrakthan had expected at least some resistance. They had conquered species who fought to the last ship, who would rather die than surrender. But the humans were not fighters. They were poets and dreamers, soft creatures who had never known war. "Move the fleet into standard conquest formation," Cyrax ordered. "We will establish orbital superiority within the hour. Begin landing preparations for the ground forces." His officers moved to obey. The fleet began to shift, spreading out around Earth like a net closing on a fish. Transport ships loaded with Vrakthan soldiers prepared to descend to the surface. The conquest of Earth was about to begin. Far below in the Antarctic Command Center, Elena watched the Vrakthan fleet take position. Her officers were silent, tense, waiting for her orders. "They are in position," David reported. "Standard conquest formation. They have spread out to cover all major population centers." Elena nodded. The Vrakthan were predictable. They used the same tactics for every conquest because no one had ever forced them to change. They expected the humans to cower and submit, just like every other species they had crushed. "Aurora fleet status," Elena said. "All assets are in position. 417 vessels, hidden throughout the system. They are awaiting your command." Elena studied the tactical display. The Vrakthan ships were scattered around Earth, preparing for what they believed would be an easy occupation. They had no idea that they were surrounded. "The Prometheus?" she asked. "Admiral Chen reports ready. The ship is still cloaked, holding position between Earth and the main Vrakthan fleet." Elena took a deep breath. This was the moment. 200 years of preparation had led to this single decision. Once she gave the order, there was no going back. The secret would be revealed. The mask would fall away. The galaxy would see what humanity really was. She thought of all the people hiding in underground shelters right now, believing their world was about to be conquered. She thought of the children who would never know the truth about what happened today. She thought of the men and women who had given their lives to build the Aurora fleet in secret. She owed them this. All Aurora vessels, Elena commanded, reveal yourselves. Across the solar system, ships began to transform. Cargo haulers shed their outer hulls, revealing sleek warships beneath. Mining stations unfolded into weapons platforms. Research satellites became instruments of death. In the span of seconds, 400 civilian vessels became 400 warships. On the Vrakthun flagship, alarms began to scream. "Admiral," the tactical officer shouted, "we are detecting weapons signatures throughout the system. The human ships are armed." Cyrax spun toward the display. His eyes went wide. Where moments ago there had been helpless civilian vessels, there were now warships. Small and fast, but definitely warships. They were emerging from behind asteroids, rising up from hidden positions on moons, appearing seemingly from nowhere. "Impossible," Cyrax hissed. "Our intelligence said they had no military. They hid it, Admiral. They hid it all." Cyrax felt something he had not felt in decades. Doubt. But he pushed it away. Even if the humans had hidden a fleet, it was smaller than his. Their ships were smaller than his. The Vrakthun had centuries of combat experience. These humans had never fought anyone. "All ships, battle stations," he commanded. "Form defensive positions. We will crush these insects and continue with the conquest." The Vrakthun fleet responded quickly, their discipline holding despite the surprise. They reformed into combat formations, their weapons tracking the emerging human vessels. The first shots were fired. Human ships streaked through space, faster than anything the Vrakthun had encountered. They used tactics that Cyrax had never seen, weaving through asteroid fields and using the gravity of moons to change direction suddenly. They struck at the Vrakthun from unexpected angles, hitting weak points that should have been protected. But the Vrakthun were veterans of 100 wars. They began to adapt, their larger ships using their superior firepower to drive the human vessels back. One human ship exploded in a flash of light, then another, then a third. Cyrax watched the battle unfold with growing confidence. The humans were clever, but clever was not enough. He had more ships, bigger ships, better ships. He would grind them down one by one until nothing remained. "Admiral," his tactical officer screamed, "something is decloaking directly ahead." Cyrax turned to the main display. His blood went cold. Space itself seemed to tear open. A massive shape emerged from nothing, materializing between the Vrakthun fleet and Earth. It was enormous. 3 kilometers long, over a kilometer wide, bristling with weapons that Cyrax could not identify. Its hull was black as the void, unmarked by any symbol or name. It hung in space like a nightmare given form. "What is that?" Cyrax whispered. No one answered. They had no answer to give. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Admiral Chen Wei-Lin stood before the main viewport and looked out at the Vrakthun fleet. He was an old man now, 72 years of life etched into his face. He had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. He had studied every battle the Vrakthun had ever fought. He knew their tactics, their weaknesses, their pride. He knew they would not retreat. "Open a channel," he ordered. "All frequencies." His communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Chen spoke, his voice calm and steady. "This is Admiral Chen Wei-Lin of the Earth vessel Prometheus. You have threatened our homeworld. You have come to enslave our people. You have one opportunity to withdraw. There will not be a second." On the Vrakthun flagship, Cyrax heard the transmission. He stared at the massive human ship on his display, at its impossible size and its unidentified weapons. For a moment he considered retreat. For a moment he felt fear. Then pride burned the fear away. "One ship," he growled. "They have one ship, and they think it will save them. All vessels, concentrate fire on that ship. Destroy it." 200 Vrakthun warships turned their weapons toward the Prometheus. They fired together, a storm of plasma and missiles and energy beams that should have destroyed anything in their path. The Prometheus raised its shields. The barrage struck the shield like rain against a mountain. It sparked and flashed, but it held. Not a single shot penetrated. Not a single system overloaded. The Prometheus weathered the full fury of the Vrakthun fleet without even slowing down. Then it fired back. Chen watched the weapons discharge with quiet satisfaction. The gravity manipulators struck first, crushing Vrakthon ships like insects. The quantum disruptors followed, their beams passing through shields as if they did not exist. Vrakthon vessels exploded one after another, their debris scattering through space. The battle had lasted 30 seconds. 12 Vrakthon ships were already gone. Elena watched from her command center, her hands gripping the railing. On the display, Vrakthon ships were dying. The Aurora fleet was pressing the attack from all sides. And at the center of it all, the Prometheus moved through the enemy formation, like a wolf through a flock of sheep. Vrakthon fleet is in full combat engagement, David reported. They are attempting to surround the Prometheus. It is not working. Elena allowed herself a grim smile. No, it would not work. The Prometheus had been designed by generations of engineers who had studied every battle the Vrakthon had ever fought. They knew every tactic, every formation, every strategy. They had built a ship specifically designed to defeat the greatest military power in the galaxy. And now the galaxy would see what humanity had been hiding for 200 years. On the Vrakthon flagship, Cyrax watched his fleet being torn apart. He had lost 50 ships already. The human dreadnought was unstoppable, shrugging off every attack while dealing death with every shot. Around it, the smaller human ships darted and struck, wearing down his vessels with precision attacks. He had made a terrible mistake. "Fall back," he ordered. "All ships, fall back. We need to regroup." But it was too late. The Aurora fleet was everywhere, cutting off retreat routes, herding the Vrakthon vessels toward the waiting weapons of the Prometheus. What had been a conquest was becoming a slaughter. Cyrax made a decision. If he was going to die here, he would die with honor. He would take that massive human ship with him. "All power to engines," he commanded. "Set collision course for the human dreadnought. We will ram it. We will destroy it with our own hull if we must." His bridge crew hesitated for only a moment. Then they obeyed. The Vrakthon flagship surged forward, its damaged engines pushing it toward the Prometheus in one final act of defiance. Chen saw the Vrakthon ship coming. He knew what Cyrax intended. "Boarding parties," he ordered calmly. "Take that ship. I want its commander alive." Assault shuttles launched from the Prometheus, racing toward the Vrakthon flagship. They latched onto its hull and cut through the armor with plasma torches. Human soldiers poured into the alien vessel, fighting through its corridors, overwhelming its crew with speed and precision. Elena was on the first shuttle. She had not planned to join the assault, but she had trained for this her entire life, and she would not watch from a distance while others fought. She led her team through the Vrakthon flagship, her weapon steady in her hands, until they reached the command bridge. The door blew inward. Elena stepped through the smoke and found Cyrax waiting for her. The Vrakthon admiral was wounded, bleeding from a gash on his scaled head. But he stood tall, his pride unbroken even in defeat. He looked at Elena with something between hatred and respect. "You tricked us," he said. "You hid your strength. You made us believe you were weak." Elena kept her weapon trained on his chest. "We did what we had to do to survive." "Survival?" Cyrax laughed bitterly. "You have more than survived. You have destroyed the pride of the Dominion's fleet. You have humiliated us before the entire galaxy." Behind Elena, her soldiers secured the bridge. Through the viewport, she could see the remains of the Vrakthon fleet scattering, the survivors fleeing in every direction. The battle was over. "Kneel," Elena said. For a long moment, Cyrax did not move. His every instinct rebelled against submission. He was Vrakthon. He was a conqueror. He did not kneel, but he had also been defeated, completely, utterly, by a species he had dismissed as harmless. Admiral Cyrax, conqueror of 12 worlds, fell to his knees before a human woman. The war was over, but for humanity, everything was just beginning. They thought Earth's orbit was unguarded until our secret Star Destroyer Decloaked. The galaxy burned with the news. On 1,000 worlds, on stations and ships scattered across the stars, beings of every species watched the recordings that spread like fire through the communication networks. They saw the Vrakthon fleet arrive at Earth. They saw 200 warships descend upon what everyone believed was a helpless world. Then they saw the truth. They saw 400 human warships emerge from hiding. They saw the Prometheus decloak. That impossible vessel, 3 kilometers of death that should not have existed. They saw the greatest military force in the galaxy torn apart in less than an hour. The recordings were played again and again. Military analysts studied every moment of the battle. Politicians debated what it meant. Common citizens stared at their screens in disbelief. The humans, the poets, the dreamers, the species that everyone thought had no teeth. They had just destroyed the pride of the Varakthan Dominion. In the Great Council Hall of the Galactic Concord, representatives from 300 species gathered in emergency session. The chamber was vast, designed to hold thousands of beings from across the galaxy. Today, every seat was filled. Ambassador Korath of the Velish Collective rose to speak. He was a tall being with blue skin and large dark eyes, known for his calm wisdom in times of crisis. But today, even his voice carried a note of fear. "We have all seen the recordings," he said. "We have all witnessed what the humans did to the Varakthan fleet. The question before us now is simple. What do we do about it?" Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The question was not simple at all. Ambassador Dren of the Kaxathi Union stood next. She was small and fierce, her species known for their direct manner of speaking. "What we do is obvious. The humans have been lying to us for 200 years. They have hidden a military force that rivals any power in the galaxy. They are a threat. We must act before they become too strong to stop." "And how do you propose we act?" Another voice called out. "The humans just destroyed 200 Varakthan warships with minimal losses. Do you want to test their strength yourself?" The chamber erupted in argument. Some demanded immediate action against Earth. Others called for caution. A few suggested alliance, but they were shouted down by those who feared what humanity might become. In the back of the chamber, a human sat quietly and watched. Admiral Chen Weilin had come to the Galactic Concord not as a conqueror, but as a messenger. He wore a simple uniform without medals or decorations. He waited patiently for the arguing to die down. When the chamber finally fell silent, Korath turned to face him. "Admiral Chen, you have requested to address this council. We will hear what you have to say." Chen rose slowly. He was an old man, his hair white, his face lined with age. But his eyes were sharp and clear as he looked out at the assembled representatives of the galaxy. "I understand your fear," he began. "For 200 years, humanity has hidden its true strength from you. We pretended to be weak when we were strong. We let you believe we were harmless when we were building weapons that could challenge any power in the galaxy. I will not apologize for this. We did what we had to do to survive." The chamber was silent. Every being listened intently. "But I did not come here to threaten you," Chen continued. "I came here to explain and to make an offer." He pressed a control on the podium before him. A holographic display appeared, showing images from Earth's history. Cities burning, soldiers dying, weapons that could destroy entire nations. "Humanity knows war," Chen said. "We spent thousands of years killing each other before we reached the stars. We invented weapons of terrible power and used them on ourselves. We came close to extinction many times because we could not stop fighting." The images shifted, showing the first alien contact. Human ambassadors meeting with strange beings from distant worlds. The discovery of the Galactic Concord and the empires beyond. "When we met you, we saw a choice. We could become another empire, using our strength to conquer and dominate. We had the capability. We have always had the capability, but we chose a different path." Chen looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings from 100 different species. "For 200 years, we built our strength in secret, and for 200 years, we never used it. Not once. We watched empires rise and fall. We saw species conquered and enslaved. We had the power to intervene, but we stayed hidden. Do you know why?" No one answered. "Because power corrupts," Chen said softly. "We knew that if we revealed our strength, we would be tempted to use it. We would become the thing we feared most. Another empire, another tyrant, another monster that the galaxy had to fear." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We only revealed ourselves because we had no choice. The Varakthan forced our hand. They came to enslave our world and we defended ourselves. Nothing more, nothing less." Ambassador Dren spoke up. "And now? Now that your secret is revealed, What stops you from becoming the conquerors you claim to despise? Chen smiled sadly. Nothing stops us. We could conquer the galaxy if we chose. The Prometheus alone could destroy any fleet you could assemble against it. We have weapons you have never imagined, technologies that would take your scientists centuries to understand. Fear rippled through the chamber. Beings shifted nervously in their seats. But we will not conquer you, Chen said firmly. We have never wanted to rule the galaxy. We only wanted to protect our home, and now we want to offer that protection to others. He changed the display again. This time it showed technical specifications, ship designs, weapon systems, defensive technologies. I am authorized by the United Earth government to make the following offer. Any species that commits to a mutual defense pact with Earth will receive access to our defensive technologies. We will help you build ships that can protect your worlds. We will share the secrets that kept us safe for 200 years. In return, we ask only that you stand with us against any who would threaten peace. The chamber exploded in noise. Representatives shouted questions and objections. Some accused Chen of lying. Others demanded to know the catch. A few called for his immediate arrest. Chen waited patiently for the noise to subside. I know you do not trust us, he said when he could speak again. I know that 200 years of deception cannot be forgiven easily, but I ask you to judge us by our actions, not our words. In 2 centuries of secret strength, we never attacked anyone. We never threatened anyone. We never used our power for anything but defense. That is who we are. That is who we choose to be. He bowed his head slightly to the assembled representatives. The offer stands. Think about it. Discuss it among yourselves. When you are ready, you know where to find us. Chen turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, the galaxy's leaders sat in stunned silence, contemplating a future that had changed forever. On Earth, Elena watched the council session on a screen in her office. She had been promoted to admiral after the battle, given command of the Aurora Fleet's defensive operations. It was a heavy responsibility, but one she had been trained to carry. Do you think they will accept? David asked. He stood beside her, watching the chaos in the council chamber. Some will, Elena said. The smaller species, the ones who live in fear of the great powers, they have nothing to lose and everything to gain. The larger powers will take longer. They fear us almost as much as they feared the Vrakthon. And the Vrakthon? What happens to them? Elena thought about Admiral Cyrax, the warrior who had knelt before her on his own bridge. He was a prisoner now, being treated with respect and dignity on Earth. She had spoken with him several times since the battle. He was proud and bitter, but also curious. He wanted to understand how his fleet had been defeated so completely. The Vrakthon will have to decide what they want to be, Elena said. They can continue as conquerors and face a galaxy that now knows how to fight back. Or they can change, become something different, something better. You think they will change? Elena smiled slightly. I think they have never been given the choice before. No one has ever defeated them and then shown them mercy. They do not know how to respond to that. It challenges everything they believe about power and strength. She turned away from the screen. Outside her window, Earth shone blue and beautiful against the darkness of space. Above it, visible to the naked eye now, the Prometheus maintained its silent watch. We have changed the galaxy, Elena said quietly. We have shown them that there is another way. Strength does not have to mean conquest. Power does not have to mean tyranny. We can protect without destroying. We can defend without dominating. And if they do not listen, if the great powers decide we are a threat that must be eliminated, Elena's smile faded. Then we will defend ourselves, as we always have, as we always will. She thought of all the men and women who had given their lives to build the Aurora fleet, the workers who had spent their lives in secret shipyards, the soldiers who had trained for battles they hoped would never come, the scientists who had developed weapons in hidden laboratories. They had given humanity a chance to show the galaxy what humans could be, not conquerors, not tyrants, protectors. Whether the galaxy would accept that gift remained to be seen. In the council chamber, the arguing continued, but already some representatives were looking at each other with new eyes. They were thinking about the offer Chen had made. They were imagining a future where their worlds were protected, where they did not have to live in fear of the great powers. Change was coming. Slow, perhaps, Uncertain, definitely, but coming nonetheless. And above Earth, watching over the world that had hidden its strength for 2 centuries, the Prometheus waited, patient, silent, ready. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for the last time. They thought Earth's orbit was unguarded until our secret Star Destroyer Decloaked 1 year had passed since the battle that changed everything. Elena stood on the observation deck of Sentinel Station, Earth's newest and most advanced orbital facility. Through the transparent walls, she could see the planet below, blue and green and beautiful. Around it, ships moved in steady patterns, some arriving from distant worlds, others departing for destinations across the galaxy. So much had changed in a single year. The first to accept humanity's offer had been the Morix, a small species from the outer reaches of known space. They had lived in fear of the Vrakthan for centuries, paying tribute and bowing to their conquerors just to survive. When Admiral Chen offered them access to defensive technology, they did not hesitate. Now the Morix had a fleet of their own, small by galactic standards but powerful enough to defend their worlds. They had tested it 3 months ago, when a Vrakthan raiding party entered their system expecting easy prey. The raiders had retreated with heavy losses. Word spread quickly. Other species began to reach out. The Velish Collective, known for their wisdom and caution, had spent months studying the offer before finally accepting. The Kexathi Union, despite their initial hostility, had come to Earth seeking alliance when their border worlds came under threat. One by one, species that had lived in fear were learning to stand tall. Elena turned as the door behind her opened. David entered, carrying a data tablet and wearing the tired expression of someone who had been working too many hours. "The new shipyard is operational," he reported. "First vessels will be ready in 6 months. The Velish engineering teams are already on site, learning our construction methods." Elena nodded. "Good. What about the Kexathi situation?" "Resolved. The raiders withdrew when they saw the new defense platforms. No shots fired, just like the last 3 incidents." That was the pattern now. Word of human technology was spreading through the galaxy. Species that had once been helpless were now protected. Aggressors who had counted on easy victories were finding something else entirely. The galaxy was learning that weakness was no longer something to exploit. "There is one more thing," David said. He hesitated, clearly uncertain how to deliver the news. "We have received a message from the Vrakthan homeworld. They are requesting a meeting." Elena raised an eyebrow. In the years since the battle, the Vrakthan Dominion had been silent. They had retreated to their core worlds, licking their wounds and trying to understand what had happened to them. There had been no new conquests, no new raids. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Vrakthan had stopped expanding. "What kind of meeting?" Elena asked. "They want to send an ambassador to discuss terms." "Terms of what?" David shrugged. The message did not say, but it came through official channels, with all the proper diplomatic protocols. "This is not a trap or a trick. They genuinely want to talk." Elena considered this for a long moment. The Vrakthan had been the terror of the galaxy for centuries. They had conquered and enslaved more species than anyone could count. They had never negotiated, never compromised, never shown weakness, until now. "Tell them we accept," Elena said. "Arrange a meeting on neutral ground. The old Galactic Concord station at the edge of their territory." David nodded and left to carry out her orders. 3 weeks later, Elena stood in a conference room on the neutral station. Across the table sat 3 Vrakthan, their scaled faces unreadable. The leader was Admiral Cyrax, the same warrior who had knelt before Elena on his own bridge a year ago. He had been released after the battle, allowed to return home with the other prisoners. His presence here was significant. "Admiral Vasquez," Cyrax said, using her new title. His voice was formal, almost stiff. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." "I am curious," Elena replied. "A year ago, you came to Earth to conquer us. Now you come to talk. What changed?" Cyrax was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried something Elena had never heard from a Vrakthan before. Uncertainty. "Everything changed," he said. "When I returned home after the battle, I expected to be executed for my failure. The Dominion does not tolerate defeat, but instead, the High Command wanted to hear my report. Every detail, every moment of the battle." He paused, his clawed hands resting on the table. They wanted to understand how we lost. I told them about your hidden fleet, your advanced weapons, your massive ship that appeared from nothing. But those things were not what troubled them most. Do you know what troubled them, Admiral? Elena shook her head. You let us go, Cyrax said. You had destroyed our fleet. You had captured our flagship. You could have killed every survivor and continued to our homeworld. Your Prometheus could have burned our worlds to ash, and we could not have stopped you. His eyes met Elena's. But you did not. You let the survivors retreat. You treated your prisoners with dignity. You released us after the battle. In 1,000 years of conquest, no one has ever done that. No one has ever shown the Vrakthan mercy. Elena nodded slowly. We did not fight you because we wanted to destroy you. We fought because you gave us no choice. When the battle was over, there was no reason to continue killing. That is what troubled the High Command most of all, Cyrax said. They could not understand it. They spent months debating what your mercy meant. Was it weakness? Was it a trap? Was it some strange human custom they did not comprehend? And what did they conclude? Cyrax was quiet for a long moment before answering. They concluded that they had been wrong. About humanity, about conquest, about everything. Elena felt something shift in the room. This was not the arrogant warrior who had demanded Earth's surrender a year ago. This was something new. The Dominion has conquered for 1,000 years because we believed it was the only way, Cyrax continued. The strong take from the weak. That is the law of the galaxy. It is what we have always known. But you showed us something different. You were stronger than us, but you did not take. You did not conquer. You protected. He leaned forward slightly. We want to understand. We want to learn. The Dominion is not asking to become your ally. We are not ready for that, but we are asking for a chance to be something other than what we have been. Elena studied the Vrakthan across the table. She thought about all the species they had conquered over the centuries, all the worlds they had burned, all the lives they had destroyed. But she also thought about what humanity had believed for 2 centuries. That change was possible, that even the worst among them could become better, that showing mercy was not weakness, but strength. You want a chance, Elena said slowly. I can give you that, but it will not be easy. The species you have conquered will not forgive you quickly. The damage you have done will take generations to heal. We understand, Cyrax said. We do not expect forgiveness. We only ask for the opportunity to earn it. Elena nodded. Then you have it. The Dominion will be welcome at the negotiating table. You can begin making amends for what you have done. It will be a long road. Long roads are still roads, Cyrax replied. A year ago, I did not believe the Vrakthan could walk any road but conquest. You have shown me that I was wrong. Perhaps the rest of my species can learn what I have learned. He stood and extended his clawed hand in a gesture that Elena recognized as a Vrakthan sign of respect between equals. Thank you, Admiral, for your mercy then, and for your patience now. Elena took his hand. Do not thank me yet. Prove that your species can change. That will be thanks enough. 6 months later, Elena returned to Earth. She had been traveling through the galaxy, meeting with species who had joined the Alliance, overseeing the construction of new defense systems, helping to build a future that no one had thought possible. Now she stood on the observation deck of Sentinel Station, looking down at her homeworld. Beside her, Admiral Chen Wei-Lin watched the stars with the tired eyes of a man who had finally seen his life's work completed. The Prometheus is returning to its fold, Chen said quietly, hidden again, waiting. Elena nodded. The great ship was not needed anymore. The galaxy was changing. The threats that had once seemed so overwhelming were fading. Species that had lived in fear were learning to stand on their own. Do you think we will need it again? She asked. Chen smiled slightly. I hope not. That has always been the point, has it not? We built our strength so we would never have to use it. We prepared for war so we could have peace. And now? Now we watch. We wait. We help where we can. And if the day ever comes when the Prometheus is needed again, it will be there. Ready. Patient. Just as it has always been. Elena looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Varaktan were taking their first steps toward becoming something new. Species that had once been helpless were now protected. A galaxy that had known only the law of conquest was learning that there was another way. It had taken 200 years of patience, 200 years of hiding and building and waiting, but humanity had done what they set out to do. They had shown the galaxy that strength did not have to mean cruelty, that power did not have to mean tyranny, that the greatest victory was not destroying your enemies, but showing them a better path. And somewhere in the hidden darkness beyond Neptune, wrapped in its fold of space, the Prometheus waited, silent, watchful, ready, not as a weapon of war, but as a promise that humanity would always be there, not to conquer, not to dominate, but to protect. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity's strength. Now they were learning to trust humanity's heart. And that, Elena thought as she watched the stars, was the greatest victory of all.